It started with a smile I thought was genuine, the kind of expression that makes you lower your guard without even realizing it. They made me believe I was part of something bigger, something worth trusting. Every word was carefully placed, every laugh just in the right place, and every promise wrapped in enough sincerity to seem unbreakable. I didn't see the strings they were pulling, not at first. I thought we were working toward the same goal, that we wanted the same things. But they were just moving pieces around a board I didn't even know I was standing on. Looking back, the signs were there. The sudden silences when I entered a room, the way conversations shifted mid-sentence, the knowing glances they exchanged when they thought I wasn't paying attention. They played me slowly, methodically, making me feel like I was winning when, in reality, I was being pushed exactly where they wanted me. Every decision I made felt like my own, but in truth, I was only acting out the role they had written for me. I was the fool in their story, dancing to music I didn't even know was playing. The breaking point came quietly, without drama. A single sentence overheard in a hallway, a careless confession wrapped in a laugh that wasn't meant for my ears. That's when the game board finally revealed itself. My so-called allies had never been allies at all. I wasn't just a pawn to them. I was the punchline. Every move I thought was clever had been anticipated. Every victory I thought I'd earned had been handed to me like a treat to keep me obedient. At first, the humiliation burned hot. I wanted to confront them, to tear their lies apart right there and then. But rage is a loud, clumsy thing, and I realized if I lashed out, I'd just be giving them one more laugh at my expense. So I swallowed it down and let it simmer. I started to listen more than I spoke, watch more than I acted. I learned the rules they'd been playing by, the little tricks they used, the subtle ways they bent truth until it was unrecognizable. And slowly, without them noticing, I began to move my own pieces. It wasn't about revenge at first. It was about control, about refusing to let them write the ending for me. I fed them stories they wanted to hear, watched them cling to false information I'd planted. I gave them just enough to think they still had me dancing on their strings, while quietly shifting the board in my favor. They didn't see the trap being built, because it was made out of their own arrogance. The moment the game turned will always stay with me. A decision they made, thinking it would crush me, ended up pushing me exactly where I wanted to be. All their carefully stacked cards collapsed in a single move, and they didn't even realize it was me who pulled the bottom one away. When the dust settled, I wasn't the fool anymore. I was the one holding the rules. They tried to recover, of course, scrambling to regain control, but the game had changed and they didn't even know how to play it anymore. I didn't need to shout, didn't need to expose them publicly. All I had to do was make sure every door they once had access to was locked. Every ally they relied on had quietly stepped away. And I did it all, without them ever getting the satisfaction of knowing just how I'd done it. In the end, they were left standing on an empty board, clutching pieces that no longer mattered, while I walked away with the win they thought they had secured. They'd played me like a fool, but I learned the game, and I learned it well enough to make sure they'd never play it again. The nights during that time were the worst. I would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every conversation, every laugh, every pat on the back. The memories felt poison now, each one carrying a different weight than it did before. I would remember a friendly smile and see the smirk behind it, the calculation. I would recall a gesture of support and feel the invisible shove it had really been. The realization didn't just hurt, it made me question myself in ways I'd never imagined. How could I have been so blind? So trusting? But doubt is a strange thing. At first, it weakens you, makes you second-guess every step. And then, if you sit with it long enough, it becomes something sharper, a tool. I began to study myself the way they had studied me. I learned what made me predictable, what told them where I would step next, and I cut those strings one by one. I stopped giving them my genuine reactions. My anger, my frustration, even my hope, all of it became something I kept hidden, locked away where they couldn't use it. Outwardly, I was still the same. I laughed when they laughed. I nodded in agreement. I offered help when asked. But inside, I was stripping the board bare. Every favor they asked for came with a quiet cost they didn't see. Every piece of information they gave me, I sifted for weakness. They were still playing their game, But I had learned to play a better one. One where the goal wasn't just to win, but to make them believe they had. I started giving them what they wanted most: validation. I let them think their plans were working perfectly. If they set a trap, I stepped into it, but I brought a pair of wire cutters with me. I made small sacrifices they could celebrate as victories, feeding their confidence until it became bloated and careless. That was the first crack in their armor. And then came the day I stopped defending myself and started attacking. Not with open blows, no, those would have been too easy to deflect. I planted seeds instead. A half-whisper here, a gentle suggestion there. I shifted loyalties around them without a single confrontation. The very people they leaned on began to hesitate, began to question. And all the while, I was silent, watching the collapse take shape like a sculptor watching a statue emerge from stone. The final move was almost anticlimactic. They walked straight into it, heads high, thinking they were about to put me in my place once and for all. But when the dust cleared, it wasn't me on the ground, it was them. The silence that followed was heavy, almost sacred. They looked at me then, really looked at me, and for the first time, I saw it in their eyes, the realization that I had never truly been theirs to control. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. The beauty of turning the game around is that the victory speaks for itself. I simply walked away, leaving them standing in the ruins of their own design. And maybe that was the sweetest part, knowing that they would spend the rest of their lives wondering when, exactly, they lost the upper hand. The shift from prey to predator didn't happen overnight. It was a slow, deliberate process, the kind that demands patience, so cold it feels almost inhuman. I realized early on that if I moved too quickly, they would sense it. These were people who thrived on control, who could smell a challenge before it reached them. So I made myself smaller, quieter, easier to overlook. I became the background noise to their conversations, the harmless presence they no longer bothered to watch too closely. That was their second mistake. I began with the smallest changes, things no one would notice but me. I stopped offering information freely. If they asked a direct question, I gave them an answer that was technically true but subtly misleading. I avoided outright lies. Lies draw attention when they unravel. Instead, I let them fill in the blanks themselves, weaving their own assumptions into a rope they didn't realize was tightening around them. The second phase was influence, soft, almost invisible. I listened to their grievances, their ambitions, their fears, and I became the voice that agreed with them, encouraged them, even when I was leading them toward decisions I knew would hurt them in the long run. It's incredible how easy it is to steer someone when they believe you're on their side. They thought I was their most loyal ally. In truth, I was the architect of their undoing. Over time, they began to depend on me for things they didn't trust anyone else to handle. I was their confidant, their fixer, the person who kept their secrets. What they didn't know was that I was also their mirror, reflecting only what they wanted to see, while quietly collecting the truth. I built a network they didn't even realize existed, people who owed me small favors, people they had underestimated or discarded. By the time they noticed their support slipping away, it wasn't because I had taken it. It was because they had driven it into my hands without realizing. The final act came disguised as a gift. They were planning a move they believed would be their masterpiece, a strike so precise it would leave me with nothing. I encouraged it. I offered advice. I even smoothed the path so it could happen faster. What they didn't know was that I had already replaced the foundation beneath their plan with rot. Every contact they were counting on had already chosen my side. Every step of their strategy relied on resources I now controlled. When the day came, they walked into their own trap with pride in their eyes. I was there, standing exactly where they expected me to be, watching as their perfect plan began to unravel in front of them. It didn't explode in dramatic fashion. It collapsed quietly, like a house of cards in a still room. The moment they understood was almost imperceptible, but I saw it. The flicker of doubt, the tightness in their jaw, the way their hands hesitated just slightly. And then it was over. Everything they thought they owned, everything they believed they controlled, was gone. Not stolen, taken back. They were left standing in the silence, surrounded by the ghosts of their own schemes. I didn't stay to watch them crumble. I didn't need to. The satisfaction wasn't in seeing their defeat, It was in knowing that I had learned their game, mastered it, and turned it into something they could never play again. They had played me like a fool. But in the end, I wrote the final move. And that move was checkmate.